Hey, this is Sydney, and I am here to talk us through the time of October 8th through the 14th, 2025. All of the charts that you'll see up on the screen for YouTube will be set in 0 Aries and at the 12 p.m. noon Pacific Standard Time, so that you can kind of know how to orient yourself into the chart. Other little housekeeping notes is if you are interested in going to a specific day, this video will be timestamped so you can visit Wednesday through Tuesday and you don't have to worry about watching the whole thing. Though, if you do watch the whole thing, I hope that you will please give a like and subscribe, as it does help the channel grow, and I'm always hoping to meet more of my clients. All right, so without further ado, let's just get into it. So let's do a little bit of work to orient ourselves into time and space. If you hear my puppy snoring in the background, he is a bulldog and it can get kind of wild sometimes, but I have to continue, and he's my shadow. He's always by my side. So Mercury just entered Scorpio not that many days ago. And so now Mercury, the planet of communication, of processing, of language, of words, right? Of messages, certainly, and of transportation. So many keywords for Mercury, the planet, is now wearing the cloak, the clothes of Scorpio, the investigator, the obsessive, the controller, the kind of power struggle kind of thing going on here. And so these can be how we think, how we process, how we're communicating takes on a more intense, right? Confrontational, even, but like quietly confrontational. This isn't like in your face, but this is like psychologically confronting sort of flavor to it. Mercury and Mars are in Scorpio, so they're co-present right now. They're not making their conjunction yet, but they will. Um, but when they're co-present, we know that things of a communicative nature are kind of taking on a little bit more of a conflict nature. The keywords I like to think when Mercury and Mars are together is fighting words. And these are piercing, devastating, soul gut punching sorts of words and information and data being shared potentially at this time because of the scorpionic nature. It can also have to do with things that are like literally taboo, right? Things that were like, no one should be saying that, no one should be engaging in that, no one, this stuff that's coming up is like too dark for me, too intense, right? We did just have Mercury square Pluto, which can definitely feel like some sort of psychologically critical moment where things and secrets are unearthed, right? Mercury square Pluto, like this eruption of information. And certainly that aspect is really kind of happening today and yesterday. It's still in aspect as I'm recording this on Tuesday, October 7th. We're still in Libra season, and the sun has just entered the path of fire. This is a spicy part of the Libra space. Whenever we have a planet going through the path of fire, it kind of takes on a little bit more intensity, right? We do have the moon in Taurus, which is nice. That's a very lovely, happy moon. But we are going to see some issues today because we are going to get that moon Mars opposition, which is going to happen at 4:15 p.m. Other things, because I will go into October 8th in just a second, other things that we have going on is that Jupiter is still, from an evolutionary standpoint, is still very much aspecting the nodes. So it's trying to facilitate through expansion, and maybe some sort of expansion of feeling here. And certainly all of the things that are having to do with what's going on with like the idea in America of homeland security is really, I think it's testing us and testing our levels of compassion and understanding, right? And we're needing to release maybe old stories around what we thought was right and wrong. We're having to digest pieces of information and assimilate them in order for us to go forward. Pluto and Uranus are within 21 degrees of having a trine. They're both retrograde right now. Neptune is also retrograde. Saturn's also retrograde. Chiron's also retrograde. So we have all of these, outer planets that usually they're called transpersonal planets for Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. Saturn is definitely a personal planet. Saturn is the limit, it's the wall. And then everything beyond Saturn becomes this transpersonal, more societal thing. But we have them all interacting with each other, which is instigating such tremendous, fast paced, sometimes erratic and shocking and surprising change. Uranus, liberating change, hopefully, that I think a lot of us are very much sitting in this space of, can we all just slow down and take a nap? And the answer is no, we're not there yet. We do not get to slow down and take a nap yet. Unfortunately, these aspects are going to be happening for a while, trying to kind of push us into new frontiers of being. Right? Jesus. Anyways, Pluto is out of bounds. Pluto will be out of bounds for just a little bit longer. He's going to enter back in bounds and keep going in and out of bounds until 2035, which we know that means Pluto's going to be acting pretty erratically when he goes in the declination. I believe he's in declination to the south. It usually, through the study of Rosie Finn, who has written an entire book on the declination of Pluto going to the north or the south, has resulted in a sort of revolution and a power to the people being able to overthrow and throw off structures that no longer are serving all of us. So we're in the hopeful space that ultimately at the end of all of this, should we all arrive there, that we will get to see some sort of change that benefits all of us, or at least most of us, pushing for all of us. This is a big week, I think, for Venus. So we should talk a little bit about Venus. Venus is in Virgo, just having met the South Node. So there could have been some old past stuff coming up about women, certainly about like maiden women, young women. And we know that all of the stuff with, the Epstein things are still going on. Venus is in her fall in Virgo. She does not like it there. She is kind of under-resourced, would say, in the ways that she would want. And I think because now we have Venus in Virgo with its ruler, Mercury in Scorpio, being in Scorpio, Venus is going to take on a far more kind of like far more critical nature, because Venus doesn't like the sign of Scorpio. In terms of reception, it's like she's already in her fall, but then she would also, like if she were to be talking to Mercury, which she can because it's her ruler, is in the sign of her detriment. So I think that Venus here is feeling pretty left out, pretty like she has to sacrifice a lot. And there's also this approaching opposition with Saturn, which I think also feels like some sort of confrontation around our values, around beauty, around, feminine principles. And I do not mean that in like a gender men women sort of way, just femininity principles, which is incoming. When does that happen? Not for a little bit, October 11th. So that will happen during this podcast as well. I think those are kind of the big notes, besides just mentioning the retrogradation of all of these outer planets, means that while things are changing in all of these wacky, weird, and wild ways, I don't think we really get to feel like we're going forward in any sort of good way yet because we have this retrogradation of all of these planets, right? We're going over old territory, kind of maybe pulling side of some of those pieces, blowing some things up, getting to the bottom of some things, throwing some things out and maybe taking them back. There's a lot of, going over old territory here that hopefully once we go over these degrees again and we start going forward, we'll understand why we had to take that step back so that we can go into the future. Wednesday, October 8th is Mercury's day. Mercury is wearing the clothes of a Scorpio, right? Investigative, very critical, maybe engaging in topics or information that is of a taboo nature. There could be something around secrets, right? The spilling of secrets, the retaining of secrets. We have Mercury very close. He's within orb of having some sort of influence and blending with a conjunction to Mars, which won't happen for a few days' time. But nevertheless, we have Mercury and Mars co-present in the sky, which usually means fighting words of a covert nature. Today, our big aspect in the sky is Venus sextile Jupiter, which can be such a pleasurable aspect. And I really want us to take advantage of trying to feel good, doing some wellness care, trying to maybe engage in things that don't cost a lot of money, but do make us feel good, safe, loved, supported, right? We do have to remember that Venus is in Virgo. She's in the sign of her fall, coming up to an opposition with Saturn, which will be some sort of reality check, some sort of confrontation, right? And I think it will be a little bit more constructive than, not as hard maybe for Venus, because Venus will receive Saturn's maybe saying no or anything that has to do with that. So Jupiter is here in a overcoming sextile to Venus, saying, I'm going to maybe help you feel a little bit better, help you not feel so maybe intense or critical about yourself. This sextile feels like all of a sudden we feel like we have the money to do what we want to do, but we really don't, because Venus is in Virgo. It's just under-resourced, but Jupiter's kind of lending. It's like, hey, wouldn't you like to go shopping? Wouldn't it be nice? Kind of feeling to it. So try to engage in ways where you can experience pleasure and nice things without spending too much money today. The moon has some spicy aspects to Pluto and Mercury in the morning before most of us are even awake, that could speak to feeling pretty intensely and maybe kind of out of ourselves a little bit. We are going to get the moon sesqui-square Venus right after this Venus sextile Jupiter aspect, which could speak to, there's some sort of frustration perhaps that's kind of arising in the place of where relationships are happening, where finances are happening, where our values or things. It kind of feels like a little bit of like a bad hair day in some sort of way. Moon opposite Mars is at 4:15 p.m. So this is in the middle of the day. And this definitely feels like some sort of emotional outburst and anger, maybe becoming very aware of the things that are making you angry and wanting to do something about it. This is, really having some sort of issue, and I want to caution us to not overreact. We have the Sun sesqui-square Uranus, which will happen at 6:35 p.m. And so this could result in some sort of like interesting pieces of like information or, announcements that have to do of some sort of communicative or something about communications or how people are social, sort of thing coming up, because the sesqui-square is happening in air signs. We have the Sun in Libra and Uranus in Gemini, in a frustrating aspect, a kind of very sudden, jarring sort of aspect, and that aspect will pass by tomorrow. Thursday, October 9th, is Jupiter's day, And Jupiter days are good for making travel arrangements, engaging in travel, long distance travel, certainly, things that have to do with spirituality, law, legalities, certainly, things that have to do with higher education. You know, I think that Jupiter days are a really good time to remember to connect with our sense of spirituality in general. We have some sign based trines with Mercury and Jupiter. They won't come to trine Jupiter for a while yet, but I think that it's hopefully adding some generosity and some benevolence to the intensity and the obsessiveness of Mercury in Scorpio, and also Mars in Scorpio as well. So today for October 9th, we do have a 12:08 a.m. a quincunx between the moon in Taurus and the sun in Libra. The sun in Libra is now inside of the path of fire, which is like kind of a spicy time. So, it could be a little bit sharper tongued, certainly, and it's just kind of I don't know, I want to say it's a spicy place for any planet to be traversing. It can be called the burned way. So there's maybe some uncomfortableness that we're going to be waking up with. Though at 11:38 a.m. we get that moon sextile Jupiter, which is just such a little pleasant aspect as well. And it's going to encourage us, especially because right after that we're going to get the moon trine Venus. So now we have this sextile bowl, right, between Venus, Jupiter, and the moon, or the moon, Venus with Jupiter in the middle, all connected by sextiles and trines, which just kind of brings this like flowing energy in, which I really, really like. And I hope will help us all feel a little bit easier today. It's a nice working trine for the moon to Venus. These can be about earthly things, right? Things that are of a physical nature. It could be, engaging in making art and feeling artistic, right? With Jupiter in there in the mix too, it's really kind of expanding maybe the ideas that we have around the things that we want to get done for the day of a Venusian nature. We're going to get the moon sextile Saturn at 5:31. This day feels like you can really get a lot done if you work it well. Moon sextile Saturn is a great working aspect to kind of, really know about like your goals and what you're trying to achieve. This can feel like emotional, like there's a little bit of some solidness here. There's a little bit of emotional resolve and feeling a little bit more secure than normal, and also a bit serious because Saturn is a serious planet, and so when it does come and touch another, especially the moon, our emotional and habitual nature, things are a little bit more serious. We can get down to brass tacks a little bit more as well. So I like this aspect. We do have Venus quincunx Chiron at 5:46 p.m. And I think that this is going to encourage us to make some sort of adjustment around how we are maybe feeling or how we're reacting to how we're either showing up or other people are showing up for us in relationship. It's kind of an interesting aspect. I've been meditating on it a bit, but Chiron is so slow, Venus is faster, so we know that Chiron is kind of asking Venus to make some sort of adjustment with that quincunx. And I'm guessing it has to do with something with healing. We need to heal something, and we need to make that little bit of adjustment around, maybe it's how we're speaking about the relationship. Maybe it's how we're speaking about ourselves in our own, especially with Chiron being in Aries, an individual, independent sign, the sign of one. it could be that like we need to make some sort of adjustments in how we're talking about ourselves and about maybe how we look or how we show up, what our values are. This could also be needing to make some sort of adjustment in the financial world with Venus in Virgo, maybe how we're spending our money. We're like, oh, okay, I have to change this, or I'm really going to start, it's going to hurt a little bit more. And we all know what's going on in the world right now with finances. I think this is a good time to just maybe assess financial woes at this time. At 7:03 p.m., we get Mars sesqui-square Saturn. Mars is in Scorpio, Saturn is retrograde in Pisces. This is very watery, psychological, frustrating energy. Maybe we're trying to move forward in some sort of way, and we're just not able to make the headway that we need to make. And so it feels psychologically exhausting to try to push through, to take the action that we need to take. I think that this is an aspect that reminds us that not everything can be pushed through at the time, that we need to just kind of stay the course and do our best and try not to get too intense with it. I think it also could bring up a lot of psychological anger and passion, and so try not to respond too deeply to it. At 10:11 p.m., we're going to get the moon entering Gemini. We love that. Well, I love a moon in Gemini. I'm a moon in Gemini. And so when we get the moon in Gemini, it gets a little bit more interested in various topics. It has the tendency to intellectualize one's feelings. And certainly with the moon in Gemini, ruled by that Mercury in Scorpio, I think that we're going to get to a deep psychological processing of our feelings, even though the moon in Gemini doesn't really want to do the depth thing. I think it has the ability to do the depth thing in this space for this particular moon in Gemini phase. We're going to get moon sextile Neptune at 10:41 p.m. Can make us dreamy, can, make us feel also kind of passionate, social, certainly. There is a kind of escape kind of moment here. It's air and fire. It just kind of wants to flit about. So it's a good time to engage with the dreamscape and kind of see what comes up for us creatively. It kind of feels like maybe putting our feelings to like paper, like writing down those visions, like speaking, in creative ways about where we are at in that moment. Then at 11:48 p.m., we're going to get the moon conjunct Uranus. Moon Uranus contacts can just be sudden feelings, sudden upheaval of feelings. There can be a shock to the emotional nature. It could be suddenly changing one's habits, right? The moon being the habits as well. And it could be also just something about information, a sudden piece of information or inspiration coming in, just kind of through the synapses of the electrical mind. I really like moon Uranus contacts, though in hard aspect it can feel a bit like a fissure or like a freeze, freak out kind of thing. So moon Uranus conjunct, though, really does feel like your feelings can take on a little bit of a different nature. They can be a little bit surprising to you. And hopefully you'll use that in the more inspired way than anything else. Friday, October 10th is Venus's day. We still have Venus in Virgo. She's at the end degrees. We're hopefully going to have some sunnier, happier moments when Venus finally enters Libra, but we're a few days out from that yet. Moon is in Gemini today, interested in multiple things, inquisitive, intellectualizing, and very early in the morning, 12:24 a.m., we're going to get the moon trine Pluto, which I do think is a really lovely aspect because it allows the moon in Gemini, which can often just be very cerebral and very surface, to go a bit deeper. Now, this is kind of this is a social trine. This is Gemini and Aquarius. It's air. I think it allows for a little bit more stability, perhaps, with Pluto and Aquarius. Aquarius being a fixed, more stable sign, acting on the moon in Gemini, kind of saying, hey, like, maybe you don't need all of these little bits of information, but like, let's find that one piece and like really go in and get into it. This can also be a feeling that is kind of the intense, there's an intensity to it, but it's not horrible, right? It's just feeling kind of intellectually passionate about things, I think, can be a bit of that. So the moon isn't really making, besides that aspect to Pluto, is not making any Ptolemaic aspects for the rest of the day. So it's just going to kind of be bopping around making quincunxes and sesqui-squares and semi-squares to the planets. And so I don't necessarily think that we're going to feel like we're really able to get to the bottom of things like we would want to, or to get to do all of the things that we want to do today, right? We are going to get a sesqui-square to the sun at 1:56 a.m. Hopefully we'll be asleep. That can feel really just kind of unsettled, not feeling quite right. Moon quincunx Mercury needing to make some sort of emotional adjustment to potentially some of the information that's coming out, or things that have been told to us, or things that we're thinking of psychological nature. This is how we're feeling and how we're speaking are not jiving. They're not really working together in the way that we need them to. And so there can be some anxiety here. We are going to get some quintiles, though. I do like the quintile between Mercury, biquintile Neptune at 3:35 p.m. This does feel kind of martial, though, because both of these planets are ruled by that Mars in Scorpio. Really kind of laser focused on getting to the bottom of things. There could be maybe like visions or information on how to attack in like confusing or new inspired ways. Mercury Neptune contacts is like visionary thinking, visionary speaking, inspired communications, but they're both ruled by that Mars in Scorpio, which is like, so for better or for worse, while we like the biquintile, I'm not really sure if I really like that Mars in Scorpio is having something to say about it right now. We're going to get a dreamy kind of moment at 6:10 p.m. with the moon quintile Neptune. And then at 6:59 p.m., we're going to get the moon quincunx Mars. And this can also be a very frustrated moment where we maybe need to kind of emotionally rise above it all. But like we're feeling really fired up and really angry. And in the end, the moon in Gemini is ruled by that Mars in Scorpio, which is ruled by that Mercury in Scorpio that is now ruled by that Mars in Scorpio. Sorry, that was a little confusing. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to Mars in Scorpio. It's very much a part of the day. I think that this day has a lot to do with some martial tendencies, and we're feeling kind of fired up and really uncomfortable about it, and we're not necessarily able to get everything done that we want to get done in the day, and we kind of just need to like roll with it. So roll with Friday. Saturday, October 11th is Saturn's day. We have Saturn in Pisces retrograde. Saturn days are really good for just working on your tasks and your goals, right? Working on kind of the duties that you need to achieve in your day, right? This is really a great day for chores. And I think that, with all of the aspects that the moon is making today, there is some opportunity to really get some stuff done. Now, we do have a psychologically irritating moment that's happening at 12:53 a.m. with the moon sesqui square Pluto. There's something that we're trying to figure out, kind of like really psychologically, how we're thinking and processing, maybe through the emotional body, that it just doesn't feel quite right. It's very air. It has to do with like communication, it has to do with literally the thinking process, but also maybe how it's metabolizing in our body. Big aspect of the day is that Venus opposite Saturn that is happening, retrograde Saturn, pardon me, that's happening at 4:10 a.m. But we have to remember Venus isn't fast like the moon. So this aspect is going to hold through the day and into the next, and I think also into the next after that. So when we have Venus Saturn oppositions, this is some sort of reality check to Venus, right? Where Saturn says no. Saturn is the limit. Saturn comes from the outside and says absolutely not. So it could be the ways that we are doing this Venus and Virgo thing, right? Which is like maybe being of service, or, how we work with our hands, or, how we're being very critical about things, or how we're putting our money to use. Saturn's like, absolutely not. I find this opposition interesting because oppositions are awareness points, right? So I think we've hit our limit. Sorry, my dog is very much snoring in the background. Lou Bear. But I find this aspect interesting because Venus opposing Saturn, Saturn is in the sign of Venus's exaltation. So like Venus kind of understands what Saturn's saying here. I think it's kind of like that, where it's like, okay, I get where I could maybe be a little bit more forgiving and compassionate here. I get that I have gone a little bit too overboard in my Venus and Virgo ways, maybe feeling like I have to sacrifice something or give up something, or in the ways that I'm telling myself I'm under resourced, or how you're maybe performing, certain work. So this aspect can certainly have to do with, I think, economic things, the value of money. And I think we're all kind of feeling it financially right now, right? So this is not the time to make the big purchase, and we had that sextile between Jupiter and Venus a few days prior where we're like, let's make the big purchase. And Saturn goes, no, let's not. I'm hoping that because Jupiter is still pretty close to that sextile to Venus, that like there's a little bit of it's feeling all right. Jupiter is nearing, well, actually he's not going to perfect that. He is within a sign based trine to Saturn, hopefully offering some sort of support here as well. Hopefully. We're going to get a trine between the moon and the sun at 4:14 a.m. Moon in Gemini at 18, sun in Libra still in the path of fire at 18. This is a social, this can feel pretty pleasant and social and connected. We're feeling good. We're feeling like the ideas are flowing, the ways that we want to be creative are flowing, which is really quite lovely. And I'm hoping that will cause us to feel supported, even though maybe we're feeling a little light in the pockets. We're going to get a moon sesqui square Mercury. This is feeling, definitely feeling out of sorts, feeling cranky and anxious, frustrated. That's at 10:57 a.m. Moon sextile Chiron at 3:26 p.m. Maybe engaging in some healing work and modalities that help us get to a space where we can work on our wounds. That would sound like a good way to use our time. Middle of the day, maybe do some journaling that helps us work on the issues that we have with our identity, and the ways that we want to really heal ourselves in that moment. We're going to get the moon square Saturn 6:29 p.m., square Venus 7:55 p.m. So this period of time, this T square between Venus, Saturn with the moon kind of shoots us off. The T square is a aspect of tension. The mutable T square is inviting us to stay flexible. The moon is going to first hit Saturn, which is like, oh, I'm at my limit, and then it's going to square Venus. Oh, but I want to still engage in pleasure. I want to kind of overdo it, right? And there's some sort of thing here that's going on, with the moon in Gemini in this moment that's like, we kind of need to stay emotionally above it and not get too intense with it. We need to maybe not feel like we're being blocked, but maybe assisted. I'm hoping that trine from earlier for the sun is helping us feel like supported. We are going to get a very frustrating, maybe even anger inducing aspect with the moon's sesqui square Mars at 9:08 p.m. Really try not to like lash out, and maybe because of the frustration of that like tension pushing T square, mutable T square, that kind of shoots its energy off into Jupiter, which is like hope, spirituality, expansion. It's like the mutable T square shooting off its energy into Jupiter, or into Sagittarius, kind of feels like. But all of these things can be true all at once. We need to see the full picture and not just these minute little details or all of these pieces of information. We need to like really kind of work with it in order to integrate like the full picture. It's kind of what it feels like. And then at 11:37 p.m. we're going to get the moon entering Cancer, where it is at home and it wants to feel its feelings. It is very security conscious, and yeah, so we kind of return to a more sensitive feeling, emotional space at the end of the evening. Sunday, October 12th, is the sun's day. We have the sun in Libra in the path of fire via combusta. Via combusta means the path of fire. So there's, a spiciness, an edge to this sun. It's a quote unquote dangerous place for it to be in. And so, when I think about why would a sun in Libra be a dangerous place to be in this space, it's like maybe it's not relating well to people. And like the sun in Libra needs to relate to people, right? The sun in Libra is ruled by this Venus in Virgo that's really just had a hard time with Saturn, in the sign of fall, not doing great, feeling a little bit under-resourced. And so it could be like in relating to people, we're not having the best of human relations right now. And I'm sure that when we look out into the world, we're going to get some reminders of that. We don't have a lot of aspects today. We just don't. We do have a kind of weird, confusing moment of maybe feeling emotionally overwhelmed and needing to do something about it, or me feeling confused, or like the wool's been pulled over our eyes. And that's going to happen in the middle of the night, 12:02 a.m., moon square Neptune. Not too worrisome. It's a quick aspect. Moon quincunx Pluto at 1:55 a.m. is going to feel like anxiety. I'm really hoping that we're not up partying at this moment, because I do think it's like you kind of want to take that extra drink or do that extra shot or smoke more of the whatever in order to like get away from whatever this feeling is. So like, let's just not. And same with that 12:02 a.m. This is an escapist kind of thing. So like, let's not. Moon quintile Chiron is going to happen at 11:40 a.m. And I think that just lends like a sensitivity, hopefully being able to offer some sort of sensitivity, or we're just feeling like there's a little extra oomph in this range of, and being able to engage in healing and being the healer, having a talent for being able to heal oneself. At 3:10 p.m. though, we get the moon trine Mercury, and we like trines, right? This is a water trine. There's an instinctual, kind of spiritual, sensitive feeling kind of thing. This is a circuit of ease, right? This is how we are feeling and how we're thinking and communicating or having this conversation that is very much like they are seeing eye to eye here. both of these signs really have to do with like protection. They have to do with security, emotional security, and then also just security in general. So I think that also with Mercury being ruled by that Mars in Scorpio, which is very close, the moon is going to later on then connect. It's going to translate its light from this trine to Mercury, and then it's going to trine Mars. I think it's just really gonna kind of light up what those fighting words mean. What is the argument? It is intense, it is emotional, it is sensitive. These are sensitive spaces for us to be kind of operating in at this time. So while I typically like a trine, I think that this trine is very spicy. And I think that how we are communicating has a really intense edge to it. And maybe we really don't care because we need to like land the word and land the punch. And I'm going to say we maybe need to really be careful about how we're communicating in these moments, because it really has the opportunity to land in spaces that cannot be touched again. Monday, October 13th is the moon's day. We have the moon at home in Cancer, going to make some cute aspects with Jupiter. But first in the morning, it has a trine with Mars. That's going to be at 12:07 a.m. And this is kind of finishing up that translation between the trine with Mercury earlier yesterday and then coming to meet Mars. And I'm wondering if it doesn't kind of wake up and let us know what the Mercury-Mars conjunction is going to be like in a few days' time. So, moon trine Mars gets your body going, gets the feelings going, can feel pretty passionate, can feel pretty brave about wanting to take whatever action you're going to take. Your passions and your emotions are running at an all-time high in a very intuitive conduit of the trine. But it's so early in the morning that I hope that it just remains what it is, a lovely little trine that we sleep through. We're going to get a pleasurable quintile between the moon and Venus at 5:46 a.m. And I'm hoping that that will maybe soothe some of the feeling that we have, maybe lend a little bit of softness, because at 11:12 a.m. we're going to get the moon square sun. So this is the last quarter square. This is usually known as the crisis of consciousness. And there is some sort of, in this cycle of the moon going from the new moon in Libra to, the quarter moon, which would have been in Cap, the full moon in Aries, which just happened on the 6th. And now we have this last quarter. It's like, what did we still need to achieve some stuff, we still need to do some stuff, and just not feeling fully freaking great, quite frankly. It's a cardinal square. It's going to want us to take some sort of action. It is going to push us to take some sort of action today. At 2:18 p.m. the Venus is going to come home. Thank goodness. It's going to enter Libra. And we need to remember, too, that, Venus, having had that confrontation, that opposition with Saturn, the limit of, how she performs her duties and services in Virgo, how she does her work. And now we go into the sign of Libra, the sign of relating, the sign which has to do with pleasure and art and beauty, social graces. And I think that there's something there about that in particular with Venus entering Libra, is that now we are in the sign of the diplomat, right? So now we have the sun in Libra and Venus in Libra saying like, okay, we can be a little bit more diplomatic here, a little bit more generous with like how we're not as critical. We're not, saying things that we don't mean. Maybe we're taking both things into consideration. Venus in Libra is at home. The other place she's at home is in Taurus, but this is the social Venus, right? The Venus in Taurus is very much more about like resources and security, where Venus in Libra is more about relationship, relating, being social. Oh, I'm really happy that she's in Libra now. Anyways, we're going to get the moon conjunct Jupiter at 4:48 p.m. Um, this is a pleasant aspect. I don't hate it. I think that that's pretty good, especially because we are going to get, maybe a little bit of a cranky aspect later on. So this is, that little chunk of time, I would say like from 2:20 to 30 p.m. through like 5 p.m. This is that's cute. That's cute. Let's use that time. It's a little breath, 6:16 p.m. we get Venus opposite Neptune. This can, it can feel a bit like the overwhelm of placing someone up on a pedestal. Sorry if you could hear my dog snoring. Lou Bear, I love you. Thank you. Um, this can, this can be a really great artistic aspect, right? This can be a very like pleasure aspect, but there is the danger of being overwhelmed or deluged by illusion, right? This can feel like a more intuitive, artistic sort of thing, but the Venus opposite Neptune, like if I were to see it in a natal chart, I might ask a person like, "Hey, do you put people on pedestals? Do you inflate their sense of importance in your life and then ultimately, when they disappoint you, it's just the most devastating thing ever?" So, Venus opposite Neptune is, can be a little bit of a challenging, not being able to fully see how one person is showing up in the relationship, or could cause issues with how you spend money. Delusional ideas about how you are spending your money. Moon square Chiron at 6:56 p.m. brings a sensitivity, a little bit of a crisis here around how we're feeling, and we want to do something. We want to take some sort of action to like fix it, to do something, but we don't necessarily get to. A thing that's been happening all day and in the previous days was, Pluto was stationing, and Pluto has been stationing very close to that 0 degree. We're still so early into Pluto and Aquarius. It will be very interesting in these days, especially in the next couple of days before he really starts moving. He's stationing direct to go direct. Is like what events come up that have to do with Plutonian things, power and control dynamics, with things that are literal secrets, things that have to do with power structures. Definitely, this whole idea of power to the people, there could be an amplification of things that happen around this time of the power struggles. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the news. Closing aspect for the day is at 10:05 p.m. we get the moon trine Saturn, and this is like a emotional baseline, a maybe feeling some sort of intuitive sense of like security and stability. This is a quiet trine, we have this Saturn in Pisces. The moon does receive it, so it's like, yeah, let's go within. Let's get a little spiritual. Let's also like kind of chill out and like find that baseline, especially after having that amplification of feeling with Jupiter earlier on in the day at 4:48. Now it kind of can settle down. You just settle down at 10:05. Tuesday, October 14th is Mars's day. Mars is in Scorpio, sign of the investigator and the sniper and the psychologist, the deeply feeling and intense sign of Scorpio. So I think, passions are high. And even more so, I would say that because the moon is entering Leo today at 3:47 a.m. So the moon in Leo is definitely a moon that is passionate, open-hearted, creative. It wants fun, it wants play, right? But because we do have these squares that are going to be coming up, I think that there's a little bit more intensity and passion and drama than we necessarily would want. Just my sense of it all. We're going to get 4:08 a.m. We're going to get a trine from the moon to Neptune. This is very dreamy. This is inspired. This is intuitive. This is engaging with, like, really engage with art at this time, especially with that moon being in Leo. Fired up, passionate, passionately engaging in spirituality and artistic pursuits. We're also going to get the moon sextile Venus at 5:09 a.m. This is a pretty cute and social sextile. I think it's actually pretty pleasant to wake up to, because this is like, there's a little bit of drama to it. There's things that have to do with ego and beauty, but it feels a little bit on the lighter side, all things considered. There's some really nice aspects today to just kind of engage with, like, play and joy in whatever way that you can in the morning. We're going to get moon sextile Uranus at 5:21 a.m., which can feel exciting, inspired, intuitive. We have Leo and Gemini being the signs that are being sextiled, so this can also feel really social and playful, young, fresh, that sort of feeling here. And there's some sort of kind of information, or it's almost like there's a little bit of drama to this one. I do think Gemini as a sign can be a little bit dramatic, but like for the plot, whereas Leo is dramatic because why wouldn't it be? 6:14 a.m. we're gonna get that moon opposite Pluto, and this is passionate. This is emotional, of a very dramatic nature. I think that in that opposition to Pluto, it has to do with creativity and also social, like projects and people. It has to do with our own sense of creativity, and then also like having to take other people's needs in consideration. And Pluto's asking for the moon to consider others, to consider use your drama for good, babe. But it's a very passionate confrontation to, a larger thing in this moment. So it's like me against we. There is a relational kind of aspect here because of the opposition. And the opposition also has the nature of Saturn. So Pluto and the moon are kind of having this like psychological power, emotional power struggle that has to do with like how a person might want to show up in the world versus what society is wanting, or like what society needs. Mars sesqui-square Neptune is going to happen at 6:27 a.m. It's going to kind of hold for the day. I would say, like, be cautious of how we use our energy and our bodies, because there could be some confusion or some weird power outages, some illusions about how we can take action, and it's really not really working out. There's like a frustrating thing around energy and ultimate energy, or like God energy, kind of happening in this moment. At 7:09 a.m. we're going to get Venus trine Uranus, which is like surprising, fresh, new energy being kind of entering our social space, right? Or entering how we can be diplomatic with others, or fresh perspectives happening inside of relationship. Maybe how we do relationship, how we're being social with people, has taken on this like kind of new exciting thing. The trine is in communication signs, so it's like maybe some information comes through and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we can do that in our relationship. It feels kind of like experimentation in some sort of way. Mercury sesqui-square Saturn is going to for me, it feels a little bit like an argument, especially because Mercury's very close to Mars for this day. There's an argumentative, critical, frustrated energy, or maybe around the things that we're thinking and how we're trying to move forward, or the goals that we have are just not driving. We're going to have to change something, but we can't yet, right? It's like we're trying to push forward, in making these plans. It's just not working out. 4:45 p.m., we get Venus trine Pluto. Again, in air signs, Venus trine Pluto brings an intensity, also like a flow of change, of deep plutonic change to the nature of Venus, maybe to the nature of how we're diplomatic, or how we relate to others, or how we show up in relationship. There's a deeper shift, a deeper change that is happening here. It can also just make relationships feel far more intense. This is a great day to do loving, intense things with your partner in that way, but try to avoid the argument that might have happened before. It kind of feels a little bit like we have this frustrating argument and then we make up, and then we're going to get the last aspect of the day. It's a minor aspect. We go to quintile from the moon to the sun at 10:04 p.m. Kind of, I think, laying things to rest. I like the Venus trine Pluto at the end of the day, which kind of says there's stuff around relationships kind of coming up and new ways of doing. Maybe there's some sort of psychological or emotional confrontation that comes up, that feels a little bit dramatic with that opposition. And then at the end of the day, we're really able to get kind of deep and get kind of, doing more inside of our relationships to experience them in more intense and pleasurable ways that maybe feels a little bit obsessive, but could also feel really great.
Hey, thank you for listening to today's Astro Weather with me. I'm Sydney. As a reminder, I'm always open to seeing both new and my beloved returning clients. My website is ddastrology.com. That is D as in dog, astrology.com to check me out, and just click the email buttons in order to schedule with me. If you're into a more conversational feel with your podcast and content, I have a podcast called BS Astrology with my fellow Mercurial Mommy Bender, and we put out episodes every Sunday for the week. Just search BS Astrology on YouTube or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcast, including Spotify, Audible, and more. Have a good day.